Good evening or afternoon, depending on where you're calling from, everyone. We're just going to give it a second or a minute for folks to trickle in. But you are joining the Getting Out of Delinquency and Default with Student Debt Crisis Center. We'll get started here in just a minute. All right. Good evening, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Natalia Abrams. You're joining our Getting Out of Delinquency and Default workshop. Today's date is January 21st, 2026. We are Student Debt Crisis Center, as I mentioned, the national advocacy organization with 2 million supporters nationwide, calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and an end to the student debt crisis once and for all. A quick thank you to our funders that help bring these workshops to you all. This programming was funded by the Annie E. Casey Foundation. And while we thank them so much for their support, we want to also be clear that the information and opinions presented on this workshop are from us, Student Debt Crisis Center alone, and do not reflect the opinions of the foundation. Some quick reminders. We want to ask you to please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. I believe the chat has been disabled, but you can ask questions in the Q&A function. We will do our best to answer as many as possible. Any information shared on today's clinic, it pertains to current guidelines and rules. Today is January 21st. As you'll see quickly, we did have an update last Friday. Things are changing all the time. A recording of this will be provided to anyone attending this workshop today or this webinar. So you will get a recording of this after the workshop. And another reminder that's not on here, we also have a survey. We'd love to know how we're doing and how we can improve these workshops going forward. So after the workshop, if you could just take a few minutes to fill out our survey, we'd be greatly appreciated. It would be greatly appreciated. So today we plan to cover what is the default and delinquency? How do I get out of default? How do I lower my monthly payment? Pathways to loan forgiveness, and we always have a resource page. Quick disclaimer, we are not financial counselors nor attorneys. We are advocates and experts here to help. So let's go over some of these federal updates. On default, this is a big one. Last week on Friday, it was late Friday afternoon, the Department of Education announced that it was going to temporarily pause involuntary collections on defaulted student loans. This includes wage garnishments, tax refund seizures, and more. You may have heard the news over the holiday break that the Department of Education was going to resume garnishment. They were going to and it's involuntary, meaning they work with your employer to garnish your wages if you are in default. That has been temporarily paused. This is a temporary win. And we want to thank you all for signing petitions, sharing your stories. It's really because of your hard work that we were able to secure this temporary reprieve. So with that, what that means is about 5 million people that have defaulted student loans and the more than 4 million people in late stage delinquency who are projected to be in default in the coming months. There is this temporary reprieve. We do not know how long, but we'll take what we can get. In addition, there's the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, or OBBA. There are many more changes that are coming that will begin on July 1st. This will impact folks who have defaulted loans and who are considering taking action like consolidation to get out of default. Quick reminder, if you have an unconsolidated Parent Plus loan in default, you may want to consider consolidating by April 1st to give yourself ample time for your consolidation application to be processed before the July 1st, 2026 deadline. So we're going to quickly go over types of student loans. This is helpful for you to just understand the rest of the workshop and what, types of loans you have. Oftentimes people don't even know what type of loans they have. So with student loans, there's federal loans and private loans. For the remainder of this workshop, we will be covering federal loans only and federal loan default. But with federal loans, you have direct loans. These are loans that have been issued post, the majority of them post 2010. Some people do have direct loans prior to that, but the majority of them were issued after 2010. And under that direct loan program, you have direct subsidized and unsubsidized. You have the direct graduate plus loan, but as you can see, that's in red. These will no longer be issued starting July 1st of 2026 or of this year. And then in the direct loans, we also have the direct parent plus loans and direct consolidation loans. Also under federal loans, we have Perkins loans. These are loans that were issued by your school. And then we have the older FFELP loan program, the Federal Family Education Loan Program. These were phased out in 2010 when the direct loan program became the only program, but we know many borrowers have been borrowing for decades. And if that's the case, you probably have these older FFELP loans. Those would show up as subsidized Stafford, unsubsidized Stafford, FFELP plus loans, FFELP consolidated loans, and FFELP parent plus loans. Again, those were phased out in 2010, but if you have them, you can always consolidate to the direct loan program to get the more generous repayment plan options. So let's quickly go over a timeline. We know that starting, now it's almost 6 years ago, in March of 2020, there was a federal payment pause for a majority of federal student loans. No payments were required, no interest was accruing. Then from October of 2023 to the end of September of 2024, payments resumed, and there was an on-ramp program that even if you didn't make a payment while you were accruing interest, there was no risk of default. But starting on October 1st in 2024, which was, now a year and 3 months ago, there was no protections for missed payments. And you'll see as we get into what default means, why that's important. And now we have 5 million borrowers currently in default and millions more at risk of what the department is calling late stage delinquency, very close to your 9-month mark of being in default. So what is delinquency and default? So technically, after the first day of not making a payment, your loans are delinquent. When things really start to get sticky is 90 days past due, that delinquency is reported on your credit report. That's often when folks come to us and notice that something's wrong. Loans remain delinquent until missed payments are made up or you place yourself in a deferment forbearance period until that's granted for the delinquent period. After 270 days or 9 months past due, then your student loan is in default. Consequences of default include tax refunds withheld, wage garnishment, ineligibility for future federal loans, future student loans. Don't worry, there are ways to get out of default. And as I mentioned at the top of this, for right now, there is a temporary reprieve on the tax refunds being withheld or wage garnishment. Also, Perkins loans, if you've not consolidated them previously, technically can be placed into default after 1 day of missed payments. So let's just go over this again of what happens if you default on your student loan. And this is if you've made 0 payments for 270 days or 9 months. Technically, the entire loan amount will become due in full. we know that this is very difficult if you've fallen into default, which is why Sabrina, who's going to speak next, will go over ways that you can get out of default without having to pay the full amount. Collections and legal fees will be added and can be up to 40% of the total loan amount. So it gets, again, incredibly sticky once you fall into default. Default loans can be reported up to credit bureaus for up to 7 years. Wage garnishment, tax refund seizures, offset of federal payments can happen. Again, that's paused. I can't stress that enough. Borrowers can be sued. We rarely see this happen, but these are all what could potentially happen. And eligible for financial aid for, if you're a parent looking to take out loans for your child or for yourself, you are unable to get additional federal aid. And eligibility for the repayment programs, such as the income-based repayment programs, until you bring your loan into good standing or bring your loan out of default. You will be sent to collection agencies. Borrowers are often harassed, harassing phone calls and emails. And some are ineligible for armed forces, law enforcement, or public service jobs due to defaulted debt. So, as I mentioned, default has been in the news. So, again, for probably the fifth time, I think already, no one should be experiencing wage garnishment or tax refund seizures. We know tax season's about to start, so your tax refund is safe. Even if you received a notice in the last few weeks or last few months that you would be put into collections on defaulted loans, we heard directly from the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, on Friday that they have been paused for now. This is a temporary pause. We don't know how long it's going to last. We also know that Social Security recipients have been paused since last May. Again, we do not know how long this is going to last. This is a great time to be at this workshop. We applaud you for being here to look at your options for getting out of default, how to get back into good standing if you are behind on your payments. So collections on defaulted loans. This is what could happen, but again, we have had this temporary reprieve, but wage garnishment, the department would work with your employer. So it's an involuntary wage garnishment, meaning you don't take any action. Your employer is notified and they can garnish up to 15% of your paycheck. Your employer will act on your behalf, so there's nothing you need to do. The 30-day notices did start going out at the end of December, notifying folks that their wages would be garnished. Again, thank goodness this has been paused. The same thing can happen with your tax return. So the Treasury Offset Program, or TOP, the Department of Ed also can seize tax refunds, Social Security, that's been paused, EITC, child tax credits, and other federal state payments as a means of collections. Most defaulted borrowers experience collections through tax refund seizure. So even if you're not working, but you're paying taxes, that refund could be taken. But for the seventh time now, it has been paused. If you're in default and you're concerned about that your tax refund being at risk, if you're concerned about an erroneous error that maybe you were placed on a list, you can go to this link below, and I'm sure our team will be sharing that in the chat just to make sure that you didn't get placed on any list. So what else could happen to your loans? At some point after a federal loan default, your loans will be moved to a default loan servicer or the default resolution group. If you have loans in default, but they have not been moved to a default loan servicer or a collection agency, this is the best time to act. We recommend calling your loan servicer to request being put into an income-driven repayment plan, and we will go over what that means shortly to bring your loans out of default and into good standing. And good standing means your loans are not in default. If you are in default, the government will send you a notice about being in default, and they could begin collections. But again, collections, thank goodness, have been temporarily paused. And with that, I'm going to toss it to Sabrina Calazans to continue.
Thanks, Natalia, and thank you everyone for sticking with us through all of this. I know that it's very overwhelming and there's a lot of information that we're throwing at you. So, again, as Sabrina Ashley said in the chat, I encourage folks that if you do have questions, please feel free to use the Q&A function. You can submit your questions anonymously. So if you do not want to share your name, that is absolutely okay. We will answer your question regardless. So let's talk about how to find out if your loans are in delinquency or default. All right, so the first step that we usually recommend for folks is to always go to studentaid.gov. We recommend that you type that directly into your browser so that you don't end up on a fake website that's claiming to be the Department of Education. So if you type that right in, studentaid.gov should pop up. Here you can find your loan information, who your servicer is, your balance, all of that. And so if you do have questions about your federal loans or the programs available to you, I recommend going to studentaid.gov. Now, if you are having trouble logging in to studentaid.gov or having trouble resetting your password, you can call 1-800-433-3243, or you can go online at studentaid.gov/FSA-ID/help/recover-account to try and get into your account. So, highly recommend that folks start there. Now, how to know if you're in default. If you have defaulted loans and you log into studentaid.gov, you will see this red banner right at the top. In this example, this person has three loans in default. So right there at the top, it's very clear you have three loans in default. It's a red banner. Here again, you can find that information about who your loan servicer is. It's possible that this person's loan was transferred to a guarantee agency, in this case, Texas Guaranteed Student Loan Corp. This is what it looks like if your loans are in default when you log into studentaid.gov. Now, if you log in, you're still confused, there are other folks that you can call, and we're going to go over that shortly. Now, if your loans are currently in default, here are some recommendations for you. If the Department of Education or the Default Resolution Group, DRG, emails or contacts you, we recommend that you do not ignore their communications. And that's really important because if you act within the first 30 or 60 days, depending on whatever is written on the notice, you can prevent the collections from starting. So, as Natalia said, right now the collections are temporarily paused. However, once they do come back on, all of these rules still apply. So, if you act within the first 30 to 60 days, and prevent the collections from starting, it'll be easier to get the loans out of default, and experiencing those negative consequences. Also, if you are in default, I recommend that you explore some of the other existing loan forgiveness opportunities. So, if you qualify for total and permanent disability, you might qualify for total and permanent disability discharge. If your school closed in the past, you could look into closed school discharge. There are programs that are available that might get your loans discharged versus being in default right now and struggling that way. So I do recommend taking a look. And then if you do need to receive assistance or learn more about your loans, if you can't find your loans, you're unsure what's going on with the status of your loans, the default resolution group is the go-to. You can call them at 1-800-621-3115. You can also call them for for any questions that you have. There's also an online portion, but our recommendation is that you give them a call directly. We found that that may be more helpful for folks to get all of the information that they need. So again, if you don't know where to get started, you don't know where to go, I recommend calling the default resolution group. All right, so let's talk about getting your loans back into good standing. Again, that just means if your loans are behind and not yet in default, or they are in default, how to get your loans out of that status. So, if we want to get our loans out of delinquency, your loans will remain delinquent until the missed payments are made up, or a deferment or a forbearance is granted for the delinquent period. So, our recommended action to you is that you can either call your loan servicer to place you into a deferment or forbearance. So the action there would be tell them that your loans are past due or delinquent and that you want a retroactive deferment or forbearance to be applied to bring the loans back into good standing. It'll essentially cover all of those missed payments and put the loan back into good standing, meaning you're no longer behind on your loans. Now, the other option is that you can pay the amount owed for the months that you did not pay. So let's say your monthly payment is $100 and you've missed 3 months worth of payments. You could pay the 300 to then bring your loans back into good standing. But we know that for some folks, that's just not possible. And so going about the deferment or forbearance route might be the best way to go. All right. Now, if we want to look at how to get out of default, there are a few options as well. The first one is paying the loan in full. Now, I know most people that's just not realistic, but of course, we want to just make you aware of all of the options. So, paying the loan in full, that's the first option. The second option is a process called loan rehabilitation. We're going to get into this in just a moment. The third option is loan consolidation, which we're always also going to get into in just a moment. And if not yet transferred to a default servicer, you can call the servicer, ask for a retroactive forbearance, and then apply for an income-driven repayment plan. Again, if you're in that early phase within that 30-day period, you can take quick actions to get that retroactive forbearance and apply for an income-driven repayment plan to get the loans out of default. All right. So again, my recommendation for the night is to contact the default resolution group. You can do so online or give them a call, which is the recommended way. There you will find out if your loans are in default, identify who your default loan servicer is, if that's applicable, and it's especially helpful if you are currently in collections. So again, keep that in mind. All right, so one of the options that we just mentioned was loan rehabilitation. This is a one-time opportunity as of right now. So let's talk about what that means. So loan rehabilitation is a bit of a lengthy process. So this is a process in which you would make 9 monthly payments over the course of 10 months. So the steps here are you would call your default servicer or call the default resolution group, and they would determine an affordable monthly payment amount for you. You're going to be asked several financial questions, income information, all of those things are going to be asked of you so that they can come up with this amount. So under an agreement, the servicer determines that reasonable monthly payment amount that could equal to 15% of your income above 150% of the federal poverty level divided by 12. I know that's really wonky. But the good news is your payment could be as little as $5 a month. Um, you will need to provide additional documentation of expenses if you can't afford the monthly payment that they're quoting you. So essentially, again, you're going to work with your servicer, provide some information, and try and find an amount that you would then pay over the course of 10 months. So you would give them a call, as I just stated, share your income information. They will calculate that loan rehab amount. They will direct you to mail or fax a copy of your latest tax return or tax transcript. Um, if you're married, filing separately and live with your spouse, you'll also need to include their tax documents. And if you haven't filed taxes, that is okay. They are going to submit another form for you to fill out in place of that to be able to calculate that monthly payment. All right, the next step, once that's been sent over to you, is so within 10 business days of receiving your information, they should mail you an agreement, including that calculated monthly payment, your payment options, and the term of the agreement. However, if you can't afford that amount, again, ask them to calculate an alternative monthly payment based on the amount of your monthly income that remains after reasonable amounts for your monthly expenses have been subtracted. So in that case where you're requesting an alternative monthly payment amount, you may need to provide additional documentation and fill out additional forms. Once you've reached an agreed upon amount, you will then mail your signed agreement back to the address provided in the agreement as soon as possible. All right. And then once that is taken care of, then you would complete the loan rehabilitation process by making those on-time payments. After you've made your ninth payment, the department will send a request to credit reporting agencies to remove that record of default from your account. Your record of non-payments will remain, but that record of default will be erased. Now, I said at the top that loan rehabilitation is a one-time opportunity. However, you actually can um, rehabilitate, excuse me, more than once in these specific situations. So exceptions are if you completed the rehab process before August 14, 2008, or between March 13th, 2020 and December 1st, 2022. So if you fall into those buckets of time and you've rehabilitated before, you actually can rehabilitate again. But if you do not fall into that category, you can only rehabilitate your defaulted loans once. All right, so collections during loan rehabilitation. Your loan servicer may pursue collections, whether that's through wage garnishment or treasury offset, meaning the seizure of tax refunds or other government payments. Again, this is temporarily paused, but this is just for you to keep in mind that this may happen during loan rehabilitation. Involuntary payments, meaning the collections, may continue even after you begin making those payments for loan rehabilitation. So even as you're making these 9 monthly payments, they may still be collecting on you. And this collections cannot be counted towards those monthly payments that you're making during loan rehab. So please keep that in mind. If the wage garnishment or tax refund seizure, whatever the case may be, has not begun when you enter into that loan rehabilitation agreement and you start making those payments, it should not start once you're in this process. So if it hasn't started and you begin this process, it will not start for you. Now, if it has started and they've started taking garnishing your paychecks or taking anything else, it will continue. The collections will continue, at which point you can request the collections to stop after making 5 on-time payments. So around the fifth month, you can then request that the collections are stopped in your case. Once you have made the required 9 payments, your loans will no longer be in default and they will be back into good standing. All right, so I know that was a lot, but let's recap loan rehabilitation before we get into the next thing. So again, the recommendation is to call the default resolution group to identify who your default loan servicer is. You'll need to share income information so that they can identify a monthly payment amount for you. They will send you an agreement in which you would need to sign and send it back to them. You would then need to make 9 monthly payments. If your loans are in collections, you can call at the 5 month mark to request an end to the collections. And you can consider enrolling in an income-driven repayment plan once you complete this process to lower your monthly student loan payments moving forward. Now, that's a recap of the loan rehabilitation process. Now we're going to get into, I believe, loan consolidation to get out of default. Now, loan consolidation is the process of converting or combining your loans into a direct consolidation loan, where you're essentially creating a new loan. So which loan types can be consolidated? If you have a single direct loan, an older FFELP loan, a Perkins loan, or a Parent Plus loan, a single one of each of any of those types, you can consolidate those. Also, if you have multiple loans, you can consolidate them together as well. Now, if you have a single direct consolidation loan, meaning you have a direct loan that you've already consolidated in the past, that cannot be consolidated further. You've reached the maximum number of consolidations, and there's nothing more that can be done with that loan. If that is the case for you, you should then look into loan rehabilitation outside of that as an alternative to loan consolidation to get the loans out of default. Now, if you want to use loan consolidation to get the loans out of default, um, you must either agree to repay under an income-driven repayment plan, which we are going to cover in just a few moments here, what those are and the options available to you. Or you can make three full on-time payments before consolidating and enroll the loan in the repayment plan of your choice, which does not have to be an income-driven repayment plan. It's also important to note that because of the current regulations, if you're consolidating right now, you may erase your repayment history by creating a new loan. This would then extend your payoff date and reset your IDR credits at zero. So if you're working to get your loans forgiven after 20 to 25 years through income-driven repayment forgiveness or IDR forgiveness, consolidating is going to set you back at zero. So just keep that in mind as well, as you're weighing your options here. All right, so I know some folks are visual learners, so I just want to quickly show the loans that can be consolidated. So again, if you have individual loans, if you have an individual Parent Plus loan, it can be consolidated. If you have an individual direct loan, that can also be consolidated. If you have an individual FFELP loan or an individual Perkins loan, all of that can be consolidated into a direct consolidation loan. If you also have multiple loans, let's say this person has two direct loans and a Parent Plus loan, you can consolidate all of them together into a direct consolidation loan. These are all scenarios where loan consolidation is possible. Now, if you go to the next slide here, we're going to look at what is not possible. Now, if you have that single direct consolidation loan, that cannot be consolidated further because it is already the direct consolidation loan. Um, so again, you will need to explore loan rehabilitation or another option to bring the loans out of default if this is the current loans that you currently have. All right, so if you're looking to apply for consolidation to get the loans out of default, you can do so online or via paper application. Our recommendation is to use the online option. It tends to be faster, it's processed more quickly, it just is a little bit more simple, I believe, than using the paper application. If you are consolidating your loans to enroll them in an income-driven repayment plan, you can submit a single application to consolidate and enroll the new loan into an income-driven repayment plan. If you're trying to go through the application and it doesn't let you do that, that is okay. You can apply for an IDR plan after the fact. I know some folks hit some bumps in the road and it just doesn't let them go through with it. That is okay. You can still consolidate the loan individually and then enroll it into the plan after the fact. Now, it's really important to note that processing times can take anywhere from 30 to 90 days to process. There is a huge backlog at the Department of Education that's making things take longer. While that is happening, your loans should be placed into a processing forbearance, meaning no payment should be required from you while you are waiting for this consolidation to go through. So keep that in mind. And again, keep in mind that you are creating a new loan by consolidating your loans. Okay, so as you're weighing your options on whether you should use loan rehabilitation or consolidate your loans, let's look at the benefits of each one. So, for both loan rehabilitation and loan consolidation, you are eligible for a deferment. You are eligible for a forbearance for both of these options. You can choose your repayment plan for both of these options. You are also eligible for loan forgiveness programs through both of them. You regain the eligibility to receive federal student aid through both options. When it comes to the removal of the record of default from your credit history, it can be removed from loan rehabilitation. However, that record of default from your credit history will not be removed through loan consolidation. And with loan rehabilitation, no interest and collection costs are added. With loan consolidation, interest and collection costs are added and they are factored into the principal of the loan. Any outstanding interest will be factored into the principal of the new loan that you're consolidating. So, some other things for you to keep in mind when weighing your options here. And then another note here, if you plan on consolidating your loans in the future, you may consider skipping loan rehabilitation and instead consider applying for a loan consolidation now. You may want to consider consolidating before April 1st, 2026. I don't want to confuse anyone, but there are major changes coming to the student loan program. And so if your loans are not consolidated and issued before July 1st, 2026, you will have more limited repayment plan options available to you. The current plans that we're going to be discussing tonight will no longer be available to you. It will be another set of repayment options that are more limited. We're not going to be covering that tonight. However, I just want you to keep that in mind. If you don't consolidate prior to April 1st, that is okay. If it's in the days following, that's fine. If you choose to do so closer to July 1st, 2026 to consolidate out of default, that's also okay. Again, the reason why we're recommending this April 1st date is because of the repayment plan options that will be available to you after the fact. So if you want to get into one of these current repayment plans, I would recommend consolidating sooner rather than later. All right, and with that, I'm going to toss it to Sabrina Ashley from our team to talk about the repayment options that are available to you. Sabrina Ashley?
Awesome. Thank you. All right, so let's get into student loan repayment options. So we have broken this down into a chart for you, and we're gonna go through a few of these. So first up is the standard plan. That's also sometimes called the level plan, and this plan is what everyone is put into when they enter repayment if they don't take action. So if you just go straight from non-repayment to repayment without taking any type of action to enroll in a repayment plan, you'll end up in the standard plan. And then we have a few alternative plans, and these are graduated repayment, extended repayment, and then extended graduated repayment. These three plans are all variations of the standard plan. They're going to have longer repayment timelines, most likely. And then they also have different ways of calculating how they charge you every month. So some of these plans go from low payments, and then every 2 years they increase the payment until the loan is paid off. And in standard and the fixed alternative plans, these have no forgiveness aspect at the end of the road. So you will end up paying the entire loan amount by the time your repayment period is over. So then we have income-driven repayment plans, and that's really what we're going to be talking about in the next few slides. So we have income contingent repayment, or ICR, income-based repayment, or IBR, pay as you earn, or pay, and then of course saving on a valuable education, or the save plan. And we have a couple of notes here. Not everyone is going to be eligible for the pay plan due to some financial hardship eligibility requirements. And then also, no one can apply or enroll in the save plan at this time. I've seen a few people ask in the chat, so I'll just clear up this question right now. If you're in the save plan and you have not made a payment in a long time, that does not mean that you are in default. So if you are in the save plan right now, and you log into studentaid.gov, your account is going to say that you're in a administrative forbearance. So just wanted to clear that up for some folks who might have that question as well. Okay, so talking about income-driven repayment plans. This next slide. Okay, perfect. We have several benefits here. So basically, the monthly payments for IDR plans are calculated as a percentage of your discretionary income, so your quote leftover income, and it's based off of your income and family size instead of your loan amount. So that's what makes it more affordable than the other plans like the standard and those fixed alternative plans. These lower monthly payments also helps prevent default and delinquency in many cases. And then it also can help folks with lower incomes, or maybe you might have lost a job or you just experienced a decrease in your income. All of those situations are ones where an IDR plan might come in handy. So when we talk about IDR plans, we talk about credits. And this is just a way of saying a qualifying payment. So if you hear us say credits or qualifying payments, they're the same thing. And depending on your IDR plan, you could need different amounts of credits. So 240 credits for a 20-year plan or 300 credits for a 25-year plan. It's important to note that periods of default and many types of forbearances and deferments do not count towards IDR forgiveness, and this includes the SAVE forbearance. So if you are on that SAVE plan right now and you're in that forbearance, this is not counting towards IDR. You're not earning any credits. And then loan forgiveness is possible after payments are made between 20 and 25 years, again, depending on your plan. So, where the standard and alternative plans don't offer loan forgiveness, the IDR plans do. Um, a common misconception that we get is that IDR and IBR are the same things. They are not. So IDR, income driven repayment, is the umbrella term. It's the name of the category and the overall program. All of these little raindrops here, income-based repayment, pay as you earn, income contingent repayment, and saving on a valuable education are all types of income-driven repayment plans. So just keep that in mind as well. I know there's like a lot of different abbreviations, but hopefully this graphic helps you understand a little bit more. Okay, so I mentioned that these IDR plans base your monthly payments off of your discretionary income. So this is a quick breakdown of what the different repayment plans are and what their percentages are when they're looking at your discretionary income. So some plans are a little bit more flexible than others and might be more beneficial to some people. So you can see the pay plan only takes 10% of your discretionary income and only requires you to repay for 20 years. Whereas income-based repayment takes 15% of your discretionary income and has a repayment plan of 25 years. So this can be definitely impactful to what your estimated payments are. And it's important to note that right now, the income-based repayment is available to those who didn't previously qualify due to hardship requirements. So if you haven't checked your eligibility for income-driven repayment plans in a while, you might want to head to studentaid.gov or call your servicer and recheck that eligibility because you might be eligible for income-based repayment now. Okay, so income recertification is something that you will need to do if you're on an income-driven repayment plan. This can be completed online or via a paper form. Right now, income recertification isn't required until February of 2026 at the earliest. So if you are receiving a notice from your servicer and it says a different date, follow that date. Whatever date your servicer is giving you, that's the date you should follow. And essentially, when you recertify your income, you're providing an updated income and family size information for your servicer to then reevaluate what your monthly payment should be. We tend to recommend folks to recertify every 11 months because your recertification is technically due 10 days before that 12-month mark. So if you just stick to 11 months, you're definitely going to be in the clear there and not miss anything. And again, going back to any wage decreases or if you become unemployed, this is a great chance to recertify that lower income. You can do this at any time that you have a decreased income and you can lock in a lower monthly payment for the next year. So definitely keep that in mind, especially if you're experiencing financial hardship, you can use that to your advantage. So this is a screenshot at the bottom here of what it would look like to recertify your income. You would head to studentaid.gov and find the IDR page, and you would want to out the form that says returning IDR borrowers. So you don't have to go through the whole application all over again. Okay, so IDR and taxes. I saw a few questions in the chat about this, so it's a great slide to go over. Tax filing, if you are married and filing jointly, this is where both incomes are going to be taken into consideration when determining your IDR monthly payment. A caveat here is that if you're now separated or divorced and you can't reasonably access your spouse's current income, then the Department of Education will not factor in your spouse's income or loan debt when calculating your payment. Then, if you are married and filing separately, this is where your spousal income is not considered. So that's the difference there. There is a deadline that previously passed, December 31st, 2025. This was the end of the tax-free student loan cancellation via IDR on the federal level. And essentially, the note here is that if you reach the threshold in 2025 and you have your loans forgiven in 2026, you still should not be taxed. So, as long as you reached that threshold, if there's anyone on here who reached that threshold back in 2025 and you still haven't had your loans forgiven, you should still be exempt from being taxed at the federal level. And then for IRS integration, that has resumed on income-driven repayment applications. If you do provide consent, this is a feature where Ed can pull your income information through that online application from your taxes. And we do see that some applications are tending to be processed faster if you do opt into the IRS integration. However, that is completely optional. And then a note about recertifying, even if you do opt into the IRS integration, you still should always manually recertify your income every 11 months. Okay, Parent Plus loans. So if you have unconsolidated direct Parent Plus loans and you want to enroll them in an income-driven repayment plan, you do need to act pretty quickly here. As Sabrina mentioned, there are changes that are happening on July 1st of 2026. So if you have a Parent Plus loan and you want to enroll them in an income-driven repayment plan, they must be consolidated and dispersed. So the consolidation application has to be completed before July 1st, 2026 to gain access to IDR plans. If you're not consolidated, if your consolidation application is not complete by that date, you're going to lose access to income-driven repayment plans, unfortunately. So our recommendation, this is a kind of unofficial deadline, but we've heard some trusted partners talk about this and also some media, is to apply to consolidate by April 1st, 2026. That way you get your application in, you can correct anything that goes wrong, and it can be completed by July 1st, 2026. Right now, consolidated Parent Plus loans can be enrolled in the income contingent plan, repayment plan. And a new update related to income-based repayment is that after a single payment has been made in that income contingent repayment plan, you can then enroll your consolidated Parent Plus loans in income-based repayment. So that is actually a huge update, and definitely something that many folks might want to take advantage of. And then just a note at the bottom here, a single application can be submitted to consolidate and enroll in the income contingent repayment plan simultaneously. So you don't have to fill out those two applications separately. You can do it all in one go. And then if you if your Parent Plus loans are already consolidated and enrolled in the income contingent repayment plan, then this slide does not apply to you. You are all good. You're already consolidated and you will have access to income-driven repayment plans. All right, so how to identify payments or monthly payments on different plans. You can, as I mentioned earlier, head to the loan simulator on studentaid.gov. A con here is that it can show some inaccurate results for plan eligibility and monthly payment amounts. However, if you're looking at the standard plan, it should be pretty accurate. Um, Even though there is that pretty big con, it is a good tool to use if you don't have time to call your servicer and wait on the phone, which we know that that can be hours long. So if you just want to play around with what different repayment plans could look like, that can be a good tool. You can also call your servicer, and this will most likely provide you with more accurate information regarding any of that plan eligibility and monthly payment amounts. The con here again is the long wait times. When you're on your phone call with your servicer, you should ask them, what repayment plans am I eligible for and what are the estimated monthly payments? If you are working towards PSLF, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, which we haven't talked about on this call, but if you're working toward it, you know what that is. You should be sure to specify that you want to maintain eligibility for PSLF. So that means that your servicer should be giving you IDR options or the 10-year standard plan. You can also use this new calculator that we found at edcapny.org. We can drop this in the chat for you all. This is an income-driven repayment calculator. It can't confirm what plans you're eligible for, but it will do the math for you if you want to see how that compares to the loan simulator and your servicer. So applying for an IDR plan, we briefly went over this a little bit earlier, but you can find this on studentaid.gov/IDR. If you applied for an IDR plan before March 2025, so you submitted an application before then, and if you submitted an application requesting that the lowest monthly payment be applied, or you applied for the SAVE plan, and you're still waiting for that application to go through, we are recommending at this time that you consider resubmitting your application. There are so many applications in a backlog, and it is appearing that applications are just being lost. And that is, of course, not fair or right, but that is unfortunately the situation that we are in right now. When you go to apply for an IDR plan, you're going to need your permanent or mailing address, your family size. You can opt into the IRS integration tool, but if you don't opt into the tool, you just need to provide some type of income documentation, like a W-2, pay stub, a bank account statement, any of these items listed here. And you must know what plan you want to enroll in. So that lowest monthly payment option is no longer available on the application. So you do need to know which specific IDR plan you want to enroll in. For processing, it can take a few days to a few months to process your application. Applications that opt into the IRS integration, I mentioned this earlier, are being processed more quickly compared to manually documenting your income. Once you submit your application, you should be placed into a processing forbearance. And this is essentially a forbearance up to 60 days that you are entitled to. If you are not placed into that, you can call your servicer and demand to be placed into one. Okay, so what happens if you can't afford your payments, which this might be really relevant to folks on this call, of course. So If you have checked your IDR eligibility and all of your options and you still can't afford the minimum monthly payment, which I have seen in the chat, this is maybe something you might want to consider. You can either apply for a forbearance or a deferment, and these are really emergency options. They're very temporary, but they can be extremely helpful if you are in that type of financial hardship situation. So the difference between the two, we'll go through them. A forbearance allows you to temporarily stop making your monthly payments or temporarily make smaller payments. There's typically no progress toward any type of forgiveness or loan payoff during a forbearance. And during a forbearance, interest will accrue. However, you can choose to pay the interest during a forbearance. So that's a forbearance. For a deferment, this again allows you to temporarily stop making payments. Interest is going to accrue on some loan types, and then different types with specific eligibility requirements and forms exist for deferment specifically. So you will need to apply for these specific ones like cancer treatment, economic hardship. Maybe you're in a graduate fellowship or military service, rehabilitation training, unemployment deferment. These are all different types of deferments that you do need to apply for. Whereas a forbearance, there are different types of forbearances, but you can generally just call your servicer and ask them to put you into a general forbearance. So those are the differences between there. All right, so I'm going to pass it to Angel to go over additional forms of loan forgiveness.
Thank you so much, Sabrina Ashley, and thank you everyone for sticking around. Let's go over the additional forms of loan forgiveness and discharge. So there is a program called Total and Permanent Disability Discharge, and this allows you to get full forgiveness on your federal student loans if you are totally and permanently disabled. So you need to provide some sort of documentation from either the VA, the Veterans Affairs Office, the Social Security Administration, or a medical professional. An update is that there is no longer that 3-year income monitoring period for total and permanent disability discharge, and borrowers can also qualify if they have a mental or health condition that is expected to last or has lasted 5 years and is preventing them from getting substantially gainful employment. Some additional forms of loan forgiveness and discharge are those on the right. So we have public service loan forgiveness, which a lot of you had questions in the chat, and borrower defense to repayment, teacher loan forgiveness, death discharge. When you pass away, your loans also get discharged, closed school discharge, unpaid refund, false certification, and Perkins loan forgiveness. Now, a quick recap. This is a lot of information, so we're going to go ahead and recap it. Forbearances and deferments are two ways to temporarily pause monthly payments when borrowers are struggling to make ends meet. The link is right there. You'll be getting a copy of these slides to be able to refer to these links. And also, you can apply for income-driven repayment plans to help lower your monthly payments. When you do not make a payment after one day, if it's past due, it's considered to be delinquent. After 90 days delinquent, it is reported to credit agencies. And after 270 days past due, the loan is considered to be in default. There are many consequences of default, but to name a few are the loans get sent to collections, but however, this is temporarily paused as of January 21st, 2026, as we cannot stress enough. And the government can use its extensive collection powers, such as taking away your tax refund, wage garnishment, or federal benefit offset. You might be ineligible also for federal mortgages, any small business loans, or federal student aid, etc. And you could also use loan consolidation and rehabilitation as two ways to get out of default. Now, what can folks do right now? So you need to make sure you know who your loan servicer is and you need to have access to their account. Same goes for the default loan servicer. You have access to their account and you know who they are. You need to save any communication or documentation you receive from them, including default or collections notices. Take a screenshot, print it, do whatever you need to do, and hold on to that information, especially anything that details how many public service loan forgiveness credits and income-driven repayment plan credits you have, if applicable. Parent Plus loans who would like to enroll in an income-driven repayment plan will need to consolidate their Parents Plus loans and have them issued before July 1st of this year. Again, we have the recommendation of April 1st. Like Sabrina Callahan's mentioned, if it's a day or two after, it's fine. But the sooner you get on consolidating those loans, the better if you want to enroll in IDR plans. Now, issues or complaints, if you have any, you could go ahead and forward them to your representatives' offices, so your Congress members. You can also use a casework tool that our team will be dropping in the chat alongside state attorney general's offices, your local and state student loan ombuds person, your servicer website. Some of them have chat and messaging features, and you could go ahead and send them a message. You could also call them or email them. Or you could also contact your local legal aid organization to see if you qualify for free help. You can also find your local legal aid or legal services agency at lawhelp.org. Now, a very, very adamant warning of debt relief scams. Unfortunately, there's very evil people in the world, and they take advantage of folks who are vulnerable. Usually, they offer loan consolidation or student loan forgiveness in exchange for a fee. If it's too good to be true or they're asking you for any money up front, it is most likely a scam. They also tend to claim they're the Department of Education in exchange for loan forgiveness, or use messaging alongside immediate loan forgiveness or deadline approaching. You need to pay this amount. Just be very mindful of that and be very careful. Another thing to mention is if you do decide to explore refinancing your student loans through the private sector, you will lose access to all the federal student loan benefits and programs that we outlined today. Now, if you want to continue getting these updates, please sign up to our mailing list. This is not a shameless plug. It's just a great way to stay up to date with the latest student loan information. You can also follow us on social media. Our handle is at debtcrisis.org on all platforms, and we look forward to having you follow us. Now, here's a list of resources, some of many that we went over today. And again, you'll be getting this via email, so no need to worry to take a screenshot about this. And I'll pass it back to Sabrina Calazans to close us off.
Thank you, Angel, and thank you everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate you taking the time to do so. I know this can be very overwhelming, and we threw a lot of information out at you. So just know that we're going to be sending a follow-up email tomorrow containing resources, containing the recording to tonight. So just keep an eye out for that in your inbox. If you have questions that have not been answered, if you are receiving notices of garnishment despite the announcement, if there's something that you just need a little bit more clarity on, feel free to email our team. You can contact us. There is a form on our website that you can submit questions, or you can email us at info@studentdebtcrisis.org. We will do our best to get back to you in a timely manner. But again, we really appreciate you being here tonight. This is nothing to be ashamed of. We're here to help, and we're proud of everyone for joining us tonight to get that information. So I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Take care, and we will be here next month if folks need additional assistance. Thank you, everyone.